Hello, everyone. Welcome to From the Ground Up. I'm your host, Carmen Milagro. And this show is partly sponsored by Divina Inc. Entrepreneur artist, certified CBD consultant, master certified CBD wellness coach, author, and instructor of Truths About Hemp CBD. And I'm also the co founder of CBD University. What does all of this have to do with anything? Well, we all start somewhere. And usually, in whatever career you're in, most people start from the ground up. But regardless of where you start, the point is when you do start, how do you do it? How do you navigate changes and challenges? And how do you celebrate the wins? On this show, we look to a variety of experts. First, to hear their stories, then to ask advice and questions and learn from them, and hopefully to be inspired too. I'm fortunate that I get to chat with some of the world's most successful people in different arenas, and they come from all walks of life. And we talk about all sorts of things: life, family, hope, careers, business, wellness, strategies, whatever comes up. Some of my guests are journalists, authors, musicians, tech gurus, celebrities, investors, artists, or CEOs of a legacy family like today's very special guest. And she's very special to me for a multitude of reasons. So today's guest is president and CEO of Seattle-based Experience Hendrix and all authorized family companies of Jimi Hendrix. Founded in 1995 by James Al Hendrix, the mission has been to preserve and protect Jimi's legacy. Janie's work fulfills Jimi's and her childhood promise to take care of each other. Welcome, Miss Janie Hendrix. I am so excited that you're here.
Thanks, Carmi.
I'm so happy. Thank you for taking time. I know you got loads of things to do, so we'll just jump right in if that's okay with you.
Sure, let's go.
Okay. My first question. Now, I've asked this of you before, but I think for our viewers that are tuning in for the first time, or our audience that's listening, I wonder if you could share with us this promise that your business is based on. Do you mind sharing that with us?
Well, I think first of all, the promise started when I was a kid. So Jimmy had gone away to the Army. He's the 101st Airborne, and then didn't want to come back to Seattle because there was nothing there. He ended up traveling around in the Chitlin Circuit and finding himself in New York and later in London. And when he came back home, I watched in the green room how people were like just all in it for themselves, management that was. And at 6 years old, it was very disturbing to me. So I remember saying, well, first he said to me, I'll always take care of you. And I said, well, I will always take care of you when I grow up. Thinking that he would still be here and that I would be able to be on the road with him, make sure that he got fed and he was protected and all of that. So the promise has been fulfilled and is being fulfilled because he protects me and he takes care of me. And I protect him and his rights and his music and his legacy.
That's amazing. That is, and you started this with your father.
Yes.
And I believe in 1995, there was a pivotal moment that all of this started.
Yeah. And so in 1970, when Jimmy passed, it took about 4 years to untangle his estate and whatnot because he didn't leave a will. At 27 years old, people aren't really thinking to leave a will.
True.
So that took 4 years, and my dad knew nothing about the music business, and so he really relied on an attorney at the time who was really self-serving. So in 1992, we got wind of a sale that was going to happen, and all of our rights were going to be sold to MCA. And so we went into battle. It took us 2.5 years to fight to get our rights back, and in 1995, we were able to reobtain our rights. And so that's when Experience Hendrix and Authentic Hendrix were born. And we were like thrown on a train going 90 miles an hour and trying to figure out how to steer it, because we didn't get to start from the ground up. We started from somewhere in the middle, and managed to get inside. I feel like, metaphorically speaking, like inside into the driver's seat and start steering it and learning. And I remember once I had an uncle ask me, like, how did I learn how to do all of this? By being in it, by being immersed in it, by being submerged in it. And you can't learn looking from the outside in. You have to be in the midst of it, in the fire.
Right. That's quite an experience. No pun intended. Now, I wonder if you would mind, and there's a reason for this, so bear with me, but there's so much information out there about your brother that, it's bigger than life. He's an icon. He's a legend. But what are some of, let's say, the top 3 things that you can share with us that most people wouldn't know about your brother? And there's a reason why I'm asking this.
Well, first of all, I think a lot of things are known at this point, but he was very shy. He's very quiet. When he was at home, he was funny. He had a great sense of humor. He used to make a lot of jokes, not necessarily about people, more about himself. And when he was at home, he loved to eat. You probably couldn't tell that because I don't even think, weighed 150 pounds. But he had my mom making all of his favorite foods, and he would just eat and eat until I think he felt like he was going to bust. And he loved to play Monopoly. He loved being the little shoe. He would buy up all what we call Skid Row and put motels on it and pretty much bankrupt everyone. And he thought that was hilarious.
Okay, then.
When he came home, he didn't have his guitar with him. Talking to a lot of people that hung out with Jimi as an adult, they found that very odd that he didn't have his guitar, but it was really about having family time. He called home a lot, so he got our stories and we got his, but the extended families, the weddings and the funerals and their life and their careers and education. And he wanted to know all about that. While everyone else wanted to know what all was going on in his life, he wanted to know what he was missing out on. Because when you're a musician on the road, you miss out on all the holidays and the special events. So he's very much into family and having close friends and whatnot. And he missed that.
Sure.
I would say the other thing is that, everyone says that he's left-handed, but Jimi is really ambidextrous. So he played guitar left-handed because it felt most comfortable. When he was younger and he was learning how to write, he would start writing with his left hand. But back then, parents thought that you'd be dyslexic. Well, it didn't really matter if you wrote left-handed or right-handed. If you're dyslexic, you're dyslexic. So he wrote right-handed.
Right.
And he played left-handed. And sports, he played both. So in junior high, he played on a football team. They were the Fighting Irish or the 89ers or something. I can't remember now. And he loved it. The governor, Governor Booth, who became a governor much later in life, when he was a young man, he coached Jimi. And he said it's a good thing that Jimi went on to play guitar because he wasn't a good football player. But he loved to draw, and that was his first love. So he would draw pictures of teams playing, and even teams that still exist now, NFL teams, college teams. And what he would do is he would watch games because he was very much into football. He would watch games and he would turn the volume down and he would create his own soundtrack with his guitar.
That's wonderful. That I didn't know. But the reason why I was asking is because, okay, wait, I got to get this. I love this book so much, and I have a few questions for you. Of course, I haven't finished it, but I love the stories and the details and the photographs and the drawings that you're talking about. But one thing I noticed at the beginning of the book, It says, for Jimmy, it was always about the music. But Jimmy is spelled Jimmy. And then later on in the book, it's spelled Jimi. So can you kind of give us a little insider scoop about this book and your process for writing it?
So first, to touch on the Jimmys. So when we refer to Jimmy as a young person, as a teen or younger, he spelled his name Jimmy. When Chaz Chandler discovered him at the Cafe Wah and took him to London and helped to form a band around him, he at the time was using everything but his real name. So he had called home to say that he was going to start using Hendrix, and he was going to change the spelling of his first name to Jimi. So that was the pivotal point when his name changed. Your other question was that I forgot now. Sorry.
No, no, it's just the process of putting all of this. There are other books out there. What differentiates this book for you?
Well, first of all, we knew Jimmy. Um, And my dad collected pretty much everything that Jimmy drew, wrote down, even if it was on a napkin or whatever. So, like on every few pages, you see like these little doodles
Yeah.
in the corner, and those were Jimmy's doodles. That wasn't something that someone else added. That was actually lifted from different handwritten lyrics or drawings that he did that he inserted somewhere, and so those were lifted for every few pages. I think really it's about telling another story of Jimmy because, like you said, everybody thinks of him as the greatest guitarist ever, a legend, a legacy, um, an untouchable, a hero. But even human heroes come from families, and there's another side to them. And I feel like in, I would say, the 80s and 70s and probably early 90s, Jimmy was really kind of depicted as like this villain. He wasn't smiling. He looked angry in photos. And those are the ones that they use, but he really wasn't that person. He was happy and joyful and full of life and very spiritual and very wise. And, you know, his lyrics reflect all of that. When he was on stage, yes, he was a different person because he was the king of that stage, and he was the king of his music, and he was the boss. I mean, Eddie Kramer, Mitch Mitchell, Noel Redding, Billy Cox, they've all said it. Jimmy was the boss. When he was on stage, you knew that you had to look at him, you had to follow his direction. But at home, he was just Jimmy, and playing Monopoly and eating dinner and telling stories and hanging out with friends and playing music in downstairs with my dad. My dad had bought a saxophone, and the story is this, and this is one of my favorite stories because this really shows a love of a father to a child. And so dad went down to Myers Music, which is here in Seattle, and he goes in and he buys himself a saxophone. He buys Jimmy a guitar, and Jimmy starts a band. And about a year or so later, someone steals his guitar from the stage during a break. And so he doesn't tell my dad for a couple weeks, and my dad knows, but he won't ever tell you he knows or knew because he's not here anymore. But he's here in my spirit.
Yes.
So he talks to Jimmy about the guitar, and he says, okay, well, I'm still making payments, but I'll see what I can do. So he goes back to Myers Music. He takes his saxophone back, and he gets him another guitar, and he says, I think you'll go further with the guitar than I will with the saxophone. So when Jimmy first came back home, Dad had bought himself a saxophone. And there's this great picture that actually I took of them making up songs, and Jimmy's holding the saxophone, and they're laughing and they're talking about those times, because if my dad hadn't done that or encouraging him to play, then I don't think that would have been part of who Jimmy became.
Right. It's those moments, those pivotal, those roots of our journeys and our history that define the future for us, isn't it?
Yes.
I'm going to sort of shift here a little bit because I love, of course, hearing all of these stories about Jimmy. And I think everyone should get the book so they can also learn these stories. But the shift that I'd like to make now is more about you. If you don't mind, you're the CEO of this company, and we as women have different experiences in these different positions that are predominantly in the past, because things are changing. Have it's been a man's world, right? We've all heard that story. What would you say if you just sort of think about this from the perspective of what do you think is a common misconception that people have about you as CEO of Experience Hendrix and all of the other companies that you run?
Well, first of all, there's been, a lot of chatter. I really try not to read social media stuff. I'm not really on a lot of platforms.
Right.
And my dad wisely said before he passed, and that was, why are you reading it? Because we know who you are. And I pass the baton on to you because you were in the trenches with me fighting. And I don't think a lot of people realize that. And, the rights would have been sold had I not found an attorney to present to my dad. My dad had to make the choice and he had to make the decision. It took him a while because he really trusted his attorney and he didn't believe what was being said, that our rights are getting ready to be sold.
Right.
So, I showed who I am as protecting our family and Jimmy at whatever cost, even if it's protecting our family against another family member. And that has happened.
Right.
But really, most importantly, was always Jimmy and my dad in my life. And at all cost, I would protect them. The other thing is, we started this company in 1995. I was 34 years old. I have kids that age now.
It's hard to believe.
I was a kid, really. But I was put into a position that I think I claimed a long time before, because I am a person that is an empath. And so I felt things around our attorney who was running things. And I once told him, I was probably in my 20s, that one day I'll have your job.
Mm-hmm.
And I do. And so, yes, I will protect Jimmy and the legacy and my father's wishes and dreams till the day I die.
Right. I think that is something that we're all inherently born with, that innate sense of doing what's right for the people that you care about, regardless of what anybody says or thinks. I witnessed this, of course. So it's a position that is it's such a huge responsibility. And yet, from what I know, and having known you for quite a while now, inherently who you are has not been changed by all of this. And I think that speaks volumes. So I think that's something that anyone can learn about. If you are true to who you are and doing the right thing to the best of your ability, on whether you're starting from the ground up and building a brand or running a multi-million-dollar business, I think that's a huge lesson to be learned, is be true to yourself and true to the people that you care about. And it may not be easy, but it'll work out.
Yes, agreed.
Let's switch gears again, because there's so many different things that you do, and that you have really led the way and paved the way for the direction of the company. Fashion and design. Now, I know that obviously Jimmy represents so much of that, his persona, his, stage presence, but so do you.
Thank you.
Can you tell us a little bit about some of the designers that you've been working with or that maybe you haven't worked with yet? Like how does that happen? How do you make that happen?
Um, well, I think first of all, I think my love for fashion began when I was a kid because my mom was a tailor and we couldn't afford couture clothes or anything like that. Could barely even, well, we couldn't afford like off the rack Nordstrom. We had to either go to Goodwill or Salvation Army, or she made clothes and we would look through magazines. Jimmy really was inspired by our grandmother. She was very fashionable. She was a vaudeville singer and dancer, and she carried on that grace and fashion sense till the day she died. I remember I used to say, Grandma, I want some of your clothes. And she'd say, you don't want these old rags, because she'd been wearing them for decades. But it started out when we started doing merchandise. It was really just T-shirts and tchotchkes, but carefully chosen tchotchkes. We did do a golf line at one point, and I know a lot of fans were confused by that, but there's a history of golf in our family. So my grandfather, when he couldn't find work after the vaudeville troupe disbanded in Seattle, he went up to Canada and he worked in 2 different country clubs, even though blacks weren't allowed to play golf on the country clubs. My father took up golf and was quite good at it. He won a lot of local tournaments and he was a celebrity in a lot of the golf tournaments.
Mhm.
So he really wanted the golf things, and that's how that came about.
Right.
So as far as some of the people that we work with Pata, Chinatown Market, which is now known as Market. I still like the name Chinatown Market, but anyway, we're doing a collab with them. We've done a collab with Converse, Flu Vogue. We did some great shoes, and we're actually just launched a second version of those shoes that launched this month, and they're beautiful. Hey, when my boys are wearing it, it's that's saying something, because they don't really, they just like Converse and very great. Oh my gosh, my mind has gone blank, but we have so many collabs that we've been able to do work with the Gap. I think first of all, it's like kind of like if you build it, they will come. If you create it, people are inspired. We were talking to Alessandro from Gucci before he got let go to do something with them. So I know he's not with Gucci anymore, but we have been talking to other higher end designers like John Varvatos. We did do a line with him several years ago, and we're getting ready to launch. We're getting ready to launch some sweatsuits and some other cool jackets and hoodies with him, because he no longer is part of the John Varvatos brand, but he has his own brand that he's working with, not named after himself.
Right.
Did some things with some jewelry companies, and we just try to expand. We have like a boom box that we did with Bump Box. It's pretty awesome. We play it out on our deck when we don't want to hear the craziness that's going on in the city. We also have worked with Funko. And so I think all of these, like just trying to keep the young people interested as well, because it's about the next generation.
Right.
And then we do our tribute concert tours to include like the people, we say like from 9 to 90, really, because it's a lot of fans that had actually attended his concerts. They're bringing their kids, their grandkids, their great grandkids to enjoy Jimmy's music.
Right. And that leads me to the question that I have is, when is the next tour?
Well, we are trying to put it together a tour next year.
Okay.
We did do a one-night Austin show, which was fun and cool, but people are still scared over the pandemic, and it was very successful for us in Austin. A lot of people came out. I wouldn't say it was sold out, because that wasn't what happened, but The majority of the venue was full and people were excited. A lot of people were still wearing masks, but we are looking at next year putting together a
That's
small show.
exciting. That's exciting. Woohoo. You heard it here. That's the plan.
That's the plan.
Janie, I know that we're running out of time. I want to be respectful of your day, but I want to switch gears again and talk about some of the philanthropic projects that you work on. And I know that one specifically is the Jimi Hendrix Park there in Seattle. What is the foundation for why is it so important for the community to have this park? I think that's part of your mission.
Well, so I was one of the first board members of the Northwest African American Museum. Carver Gayton, the Gayton family and our family go way back over 100 years. So he invited me, the founder of NAM, invited me to be on the board. And as we were literally, doing the commemorative dig into the ground with our hard hats on, he said, "What do you think about a Jimi Hendrix Park?" And I was like, "Really? That sounds cool." And he was like, "Right here in front of NAM, there's a big field of like 2.5 acres." And so off we went, and it took about 12 years. We raised a majority of the money to do the project. Right before COVID, a lot of things got really expensive, fabricators and metals and whatnot. So the price kept doubling,
Right.
and the carrot kept moving. And so we ended up taking out a loan to finish. Well, I took out a loan to finish the project. So that's why we are still raising money for it. But it's very important because the community come out. They come out to, there's an amphitheater underneath the Little Wing shelter, and they can set up a stage and they can perform. In fact, the Northwest African American Museum on Martin Luther King Day reopened to the public. During COVID, they were closed. And there was a band playing, there was a DJ, community came out in full force. The line was all the way to the street to get into the museum. There were a lot of events for kids. There were free books for kids that were being given out. There was also people brought in like hygiene products for women to go to these tiny home villages. So the community came out not only to enjoy the park, the museum, but they also came to give back to the community. And I think that that's what it's really about, because, growing up, there was only a couple things in the city that recognized Jimi. One was there's a statue on Broadway. There's a rock at the Woodland Park Zoo, which was quite controversial back then, which I don't even know why. My dad liked it. That's all that mattered.
Right.
We couldn't get a street named after Jimi. We finally got a postage stamp of Jimi. And there was nothing really substantial. There's a bust in Garfield High School of Jimi. And now more and more there's murals popping up with Jimi's image on it in the community of the Central District. But the park is really where it's located, in front of the Northwest African American Museum. It really is still the heartbeat, and people come out. They have gatherings, family gatherings, concerts. They bring their kids. They walk around, run around, play. There's nothing for kids to really like play on because it's not that kind of a park.
Right.
But people will sit underneath the shelter and read a book or just have meetings there. It's a very peaceful place, and I think really, I wish my dad would have lived to see it. And I think that he probably would be hanging out there. He was a gardener by trade. Who knows? He probably have been cutting up, trimming the rain gardens and making sure everything was manicured pristinely. But anyways, I do feel that Jimi's presence is there. I think he's smiling, saying, "Yeah, this is cool." Or part of it's probably like, "For me, really?"
Oh. Well, thank you for sharing all of that. I know typically I go into this rapid fire section, so I'm going to try a couple of them. And basically, it's just whatever. I'll ask maybe 2 or 3 questions. It's whatever first thing that comes to your mind, but you always have the option to just say, pass. So you have an out.
Okay.
And this is more about you as a CEO, as a mother, as a grandmother. So let's see.
I don't know who this person grandmother you're talking about. I am a nanny.
That's true. You're a nanny. I
Yes.
know that. I should know that. Okay, Miss Janie, here's a good one. What is your definition of happiness?
My definition of happiness is being with my family, my immediate tribe, really. And Carmen, you are part of my immediate tribe. She is.
Oh,
We don't have the same parents, but she's definitely my universal sister. So,
no.
and my kids all love you, and they love you to be part of our events, which you've been part of so many. But just building those memories and being around them and having family dinners. And we try to do this on a regular basis because what I learned, if I didn't learn anything through COVID, is most important is your family, your close family, because my family's big and it's large and it's a very extended. And when prior to COVID, we were always having big family get-togethers, which is great and fun. But during COVID, we weren't able to do that. So we just found different ways to celebrate with each other. And whether it's like, a lunch or dinner with this son's tribe, and because we're all like individual tribes, but we're also the
Right.
same tribe. So really that's where I find my happiness and watching the grandbabies. I love to see them eat. Like they have a great healthy appetite. And to hear them talk, they're really good kids. And so they have a lot to share and a lot of questions that need answers and still a lot of guidance, still
Right.
guiding my children who are like in their mid 30s, which is odd for me to say. In my mind, I'm still in my 30s. But yes, that's my happiness.
Oh, I love it. And thank you so much for including me. You are part of my tribe for sure. Let's do one more. What advice would you give to a young person who wants to make the world a better place?
You start within. It's like it doesn't matter how crazy people can be, the music lives on. And Michael Jackson once said, I'm starting with the man in the mirror. Jimmy in his songs say find your own self, and then you basically can help others. You can't do it until you start within. Your light can only shine if you work on you. And it's funny because I was just having this conversation this morning with one of my children, and that is our journey and our path are our choices, and whatever we do in response to something is like throwing a rock into a pond and the ripples continue, and they affect other things. And so first we have to start with ourselves. And if through our journey, we experience a lot of ups and downs and happy and sad and a lot of griefs. And a lot of our grieving is from experiences that sometimes we don't even think about as a grief.
Right.
Whether it's a relationship that didn't work and the possibility of what could have happened in your journey together, that is a death. That is it won't be happening. So you have to deal with that in order for you to be able to help others. Like when you're on an airplane, they say put your mask on first and then you can help others. Well,
Right.
it's that same philosophy, because in order for you to help people around you, you have to be a whole person. You have to work on yourself. And it's not like, oh, I worked on it, I went to a counseling session. It's a day-to-day, moment to moment. Sometimes we might not be having a good day, but I like to look at it as maybe we just weren't having a good moment, because the next moment's going to change everything and how we think of things, what we're putting out in a positive, spiritual way. I feel like we control a lot of that around us from within.
Yeah, I love that. That's so beautiful. And I do have one more question. I lied. It's going to be 3 questions. um, Name one healthy habit that you just cannot live without?
One healthy habit. Okay.
There's
Well,
a giggle there.
drinking water is one.
Uh-huh.
Let's see. One healthy habit. I think really for me, what I've learned in now I'm in my 60s is doing self-reflection, meditating, taking whether it's 15 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour a day, just being still, just being quiet, just being introspective. And I can't live without that. For years, I did yoga every
Mhm.
day. When COVID happened, I had let that go.
Right.
But that was my zen. That's part of what makes me who I am is we have to work on ourselves and we have to work on within and then we have to take the time because a lot of times we live through a day where we're being pulled in every direction. We're being called upon, but you just have to take some time for yourself and enjoy you and
Oh, I
love
love that.
you.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. I love that. Thank you. I think so many people are going to really take this to heart when they read your stories, when they, I'm sure people are going to go and check out the business. And how do people get a hold of the book and Jimmy's music and, all the things that you have created to keep this business, this legacy going? How do people have access to all of this?
So we have a website. It's simple. It's jimihendrix.com. You can purchase music on there. You can purchase merchandise. You can also order the book from us directly, or I've seen it on Amazon, which is actually a pretty good deal. I will have to say, I'm not trying to like push sales onto someone else, but it's really expensive to send those books because they're very heavy, as you can
Right.
attest. And
Beautiful.
so if we sent out a lot for Christmas and it was like $15 for shipping, where Amazon, it's free shipping and it's less than the retail price on Amazon. So I would suggest go to Amazon.
And you heard it there, folks. Is there anything else, Miss Janie, that you would like to have as we're wrapping this up, just have our listeners and our viewers just one more little Janie Hendrix nugget?
A little nugget. I would say forgive. Forgive yourself and forgive others because holding in anger, angst, hatred, ill feelings, it only hurts you. And especially when people have gone to the next journey, next chapter of their life, holding anything against them doesn't affect them. It only poisons yourself. So just forgive and forgive yourself because a lot of people can't or they don't know how. But it's really simple. You just forgive yourself so you could be free of the anger or the darkness because you don't want any of that to consume you. When you can breathe out the darkness, then you can inhale the light.
Oh my gosh, we have so many pearls of wisdom from you today. Thank you so much. You have no idea how much I appreciate, how much I love you. Thank you for taking time out of your day to do this with me today.
Well, I love you so much, Carmen. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Janie. I'll talk to you in a minute. Bye. Thank you. Okay, I am just a little emotional as I wrap this up with you today, but I think that there are so many moments here in this interview when talking to Miss Janie Hendrix, CEO of Experience Hendrix, and all the authorized Jimi Hendrix companies, that there's a little something here for everyone. We talked about the family journey and the history and her role as CEO, protector, and caretaker of the legacy. We talked about fashion. We talked about just what she feels she can't live without. And I hope that these chats and these interviews, they bring you inspiration and insight. If it's that moment where you need a little bit of guidance or just a little bit of love, I hope that this is doing this for you. And I hope that you'll continue to join me on From the Ground Up If you like and share and do all that stuff, comment on these videos, I'd really appreciate it. It's one of my greatest joys that I have right now in my life is having these kinds of conversations with people that I care about and that I love, that I trust, that I look to for guidance, and then meeting new people. Next week, who knows who it'll be. So I hope you'll join us again. As you know, I usually say transformation from the inside out, from the ground up, is the beginning part. Sometimes it's the middle part of your journey to success and your journey to a brilliant, beautiful life. I'm Carmen Milagro. This is From the Ground Up. Until next time, I wish you all the joy and happiness and good fortune that you deserve. Thank you so much, everyone. Talk to you next time. Bye.